Alright guys, we've got a very fascinating video, to say the least. This is about the satisfying end of Blood on the Dance Floor. This was something that was actively happening during COVID. Well, not really, and I'll explain the cliff notes of it. Dahvie Vanity, the lead singer of Blood on the Dance Floor, I think his real name is Jesus Torres, I believe. That's his real name. Or Jesus Torres. Jesus is a Hispanic guy now, apparently. But anyway, yeah, Blood on the Dance Floor was... first of all, their music is ass. It's terrible. Their music was not even that good. I remember listening to some of their tracks, and their music was just awful. So I can't imagine being a fan of Blood on the Dance Floor, unironically. But that's not the darkest part of Blood on the Dance Floor. Dahvie Vanity was a serial rapist. Like, I would say that that's basically confirmed at this point. Multiple women came out about him. So many, like, the amount of women that came out about him was endless. He would sexually assault these women at several different events. And that's really where we were at. Chris Hansen, I think, did an investigation on Dahvie Vanity, and it wound up going nowhere because he just grifted off the entire thing, and police wound up doing nothing with it. I'm not really sure what happened to Dahvie Vanity after that, to be honest with you. I'm not entirely sure what went on. I know Blood on the Dance Floor dissolved after these intense allegations, and I would say the volcanic parts, or like when these allegations were at their height, was during all the Me Too stuff during COVID in 2020. So we're going to check out the satisfying downfall, or the satisfying end of Blood on the Dance Floor, because I saw this in my recommended. It's by this Marcelo person. It looks kind of interesting. Because I remember back on my Anonymous Animosity channel during COVID. Most of you are not going to know what that channel is, because most of those videos are unlisted or privated now. There are old videos I made when I was in COVID, old commentary videos. I covered this story way back in the day.
For years, Blood on the Dance Floor has been one of the most controversial bands to ever come out of the scene era. The band was mocked for its music, criticized for bullying minors, and dragged into one controversy after another. But those headlines...
I think the bullying the minors part was the least of everybody's worries. It's not good to bully them, but I would say that Dahvie Vanity's allegations, much, much more sinister.
Headlines were only the beginning. Because behind the neon hair, MySpace fame, and sold-out crowds were allegations that involved multiple underage fans.
Oh yeah, some of them were underage. I totally forgot about that.
Accusations so serious that they would follow the group's leader for more than a decade, turning what started as a crunk-core success story into one of the darkest scandals in alternative music.
This guy is very hyped up to talk about this, the way that he's talking about it.
But the band wasn't always like this, because by the time it emerged from Orlando in 2006, the internet was already changing how music careers were built, and few artists understood that shift quite like Jesus David Torres, better known as Dahvie Vanity. Long before TikTok, Spotify playlists, or viral short-form content, there was MySpace, a platform that allowed...
Whoa, they call their friends the F word?
...musicians to...
To be honest, old videos back in 2006 and 2007 were so cheesy. Like, he could mean either of those things. He could either mean fuck or that F word, if you catch my drift.
Directly to fans without relying on radio stations, record labels, or music television. And for a generation of teenagers spending hours customizing profiles and ranking friends,
the rise of Tumblr. Tisk, tisk, tisk.
MySpace became the center of youth culture, and Blood on the Dance Floor quickly learned how to use that environment better than almost anyone else in the growing scene movement.
I guess we're the first of the kind. I really did enjoy MySpace a lot better than Facebook or any of the current social medias. Like, literally, MySpace was the shit.
Yet, the surprising thing...
Man, the inception of the internet really is a time capsule. I remember the beginning of the internet all too well, and I guess it sort of helps that I have an older brother that I guess remembers this part of the internet. I don't think my brother was, like, heavily involved with the emo scene or the scene necessarily, but he's 6 years older than me, and I think that he recognizes that he probably knew some people that were part of these groups.
is that Blood on the Dance Floor began as a revolving door collaboration rather than a stable band. Early contributors included Christopher Mongello and Rebecca Fugit, although lineups shifted constantly as the band searched for an identity. During those formative years, the sound evolved into what would eventually be labeled grunge, a genre that blended electronic beats, heavily processed vocals, elements of screamo, hip-hop rhythms, and party-focused lyrics.
Whoa, Dahvie Vanity has fucking Starbucks cups. Dahvie Vanity, that might be Dahvie Vanity's biggest crime. Dahvie Vanity is going against the fucking BDS list for Israel-Palestine. Man, terrible stuff. That might be the worst one. You're gonna trigger Hassan Parker with that one.
Into something that sounded perfectly suited to the colorful, chaotic aesthetic of late 2000s internet culture. Whether critics considered it music or noise almost didn't matter because the target audience was growing at an incredible pace, and they loved.
Yeah, I don't know. Blood on the Dance Floor's music really was not that good. I can't really get behind their music. Their music is just, it's terrible. Like, why listen to Blood on the Dance Floor when there are so many other bands that can just do the emo genre better? I don't mind doing emo once a while, but doing emo constantly is not something I can't listen to emo music subsequently. That's just not a genre that I could never get tired, that I could consistently listen to. I'd get tired of it after a while. Motionless in White was pretty good. That one really helped me through some other stuff I was dealing with a couple of years ago. I'll just leave it at that. What else? We had, I guess Ice Nine Kills is decent. Sometimes Ice Nine Kills can be a little bit corny, but Ice Nine Kills is decent. Their recent song they released about Dead by Daylight was so ass, though. I gotta be honest. It was so corny. It was absolutely, it was the most corny emo song I think I've ever listened to. Third Eye Blind, or is it Third Eye Blind? Yeah, I think Third Eye Blind is their name. Yeah, Semi-Charmed Life, that's a good song. I like that one.
The music, that's my favorite song.
But it's not, Semi-Charmed Life's not really emo. It's more like, that's like way before, like, emo. I don't know, whatever.
I wish I were a stage security guard because you can be right by the stage. You did a great job shooting the video. I've never seen this band live, and they were fantastic in this video. But what separated Blood on the Dance Floor from many of their contemporaries was their understanding that accessibility created loyalty. Instead of maintaining distance from fans, Dahvie Vanity cultivated an image of constant availability through direct messages, comment sections, and online interactions. Teenagers who felt ignored at school or isolated at home suddenly had access to someone they viewed as a celebrity, and that relationship became one of the band's most powerful tools.
So yeah, I mean, obviously that is naturally going to create a power dynamic. It would be one thing. Here's the thing. I already know the narrative that this is gonna go in. I don't necessarily care about groupie situations. Like, we've seen groupies with rock bands. Power dynamics, we all know that the existence of a power dynamic does not mean that a relationship is inherently abusive, because if that were the case, then every single celebrity and every single relationship fundamentally, at its core, would be predatory. And we know that that's silly, because power dynamics exist between men and women. Power dynamics exist between somebody who makes more money than somebody. Power dynamics exist between somebody who's bigger than somebody else. Power dynamics exists between different age groups within reasonable age ranges, of course. The existence of a power dynamic does not automatically make it abusive. If they leverage that power, if they say, if you do or don't do something for me, I will do this to you, or I will have sex with you, or whatever, or they threaten you in some way for sex, then that would be a predatory scenario, obviously. But the case of Dahvie Vanity, I don't even know if... I mean, I suppose the power dynamic could play a role into it, but the bigger issue with Dahvie Vanity mainly is the sexual assault and the fact that a lot of the sexual assault was committed on underage people. That's the more concerning part, obviously.
And as a result, fans not only listened to the band's songs, they also felt connected to the people creating them. As the scene subculture expanded across North America, that sense of personal connection helped transform Blood on the Dance Floor from a local act into an internet phenomenon. Yet, to make matters even better for the band, a major step forward came in 2007 with the arrival of Garrett Ecstasy. His addition helped stabilize the project during a crucial period and contributed to the release.
Wasn't Garrett Ecstasy also kind of a weird fuck? I could have sworn that this guy also had some allegations. I could be totally wrong. Maybe I'm thinking of another person. But I could have sworn Garrett Ecstasy had some insane stuff about him as well.
Of It's Hard to Be a Diamond in a Rhinestone World, an album that became closely associated with the group's early popularity. During this era, the band embraced every visual trend associated with the scene culture, including brightly colored hair, dramatic fashion choices, heavy makeup, and an intentionally over-the-top image that made them instantly recognizable online.
I don't think that emo was the first to do this, or the scene was the first to do this. I'm pretty sure drag queens have existed back in the 70s and 80s. They're not as common as they are now, but they definitely... This style wasn't entirely new or revolutionary, per se. I don't know. That might be overloading it a bit.
Music videos and promotional photos spread rapidly across MySpace pages, forums, and fan communities, further increasing their visibility. However, Garrett's time in the group ended in 2009, and although the departure was often publicly explained as a result of creative disagreements and personal differences, years later, discussions surrounding his exit became connected to allegations about Dahvie Vanity's behavior toward underage fans.
Wow. Oh, maybe that's why he was weird. Okay, because I knew there was something weird about this Garrett Ecstasy guy, but it's slowly coming back to me. I'm pretty sure, if my memory serves correctly, that Garrett Ecstasy was, like, sweeping for Dahvie Vanity, or, like, covering up his allegations going publicly, basically, or to make sure that they stayed as quiet. The victims, or survivors of Dahvie Vanity, I should say, would stay quiet as much as possible. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that, but, like, maybe my memory is foggy with this situation. That's why we're relearning it. It's good to refresh our memory on stuff.
That had already begun circulating behind the scenes. While many of those concerns remain...
What was my original take on this situation? I'm curious to know what my original thoughts were, because it probably was very similar to what I have now, but, like, I'm curious to know what my original coverage was. It's lost to the depths of the internet. Trash.
Largely confined to rumors at the time, the departure would later be viewed by some observers through a very different lens once more serious accusations emerged. But I will take you through that in detail later. Anyways, after Garrett's departure, Dahvie asked Jay Von Monroe, who had been a longtime fan of the band, to join the group as Garrett's replacement. His arrival marked the beginning of what many fans still consider Blood on the Dance Floor's commercial peak, because Jay's vocals complemented Dahvie's style, and together they created a partnership that significantly expanded the band's reach. Albums such as Epic in 2010 and All the Rage in 2011 helped push the group into a much larger spotlight, allowing them to move beyond internet fame and into broader youth culture. And during this period, Blood on the Dance Floor appeared on the Vans Warped Tour, one of the most important touring festivals for alternative music fans. On top of that, their merchandise became available through Hot Topic, placing the band's image in shopping malls across the country. Their music also reached younger audiences through projects like the theme song for Smosh's animated series, Oishi High School Battle.
Wait, Blood on the Dance Floor made the theme song for Smosh? How did I not know this?
These
Whoa. Oishi High School Battle.
developments showed just how deeply the group...
I guess Dahvie Vanity really was trying to battle with some high schoolers on the bed. Sorry, that was a fucking awful joke. It's a bit of a dark video. Obviously, Dahvie Vanity's a disgusting piece of shit, obviously.
Embedded itself within the culture of the era, particularly among teenagers who spent their time online and embraced the colorful identity of the scene movement. And as the band's visibility kept growing, another notable figure who briefly entered the story...
Whoa, Jeffree Star ties back to this too? Whoa.
During this...
Didn't Chris Hansen interview Jeffree Star?
...period was Jeffree Star.
I'm pretty sure Chris Hansen, like, tied back and interviewed Jeffree Star, no?
Already famous...
Maybe I'm just misremembering everything. Maybe I just have fucking brain fog on this reaction. I don't know.
Through MySpace and music, Star collaborated with Blood on the Dance Floor during the Epic era and helped bring additional attention to the project. However, the relationship soon became controversial when Jeffree publicly accused Dahvie of being a predator and...
Whoa.
In 2010, the statements generated significant discussion within online communities and briefly created distance between the two performers. Unfortunately,
you know, it's interesting because back in the early days of the internet in 2010 and before that, not a lot of discussion was going on. Like, if you want to get really, really woke, the Me Too movement, this was way before the Me Too movement, and people didn't really take sexual assault as seriously back then. And I know that's just an unfortunate reality, but people just didn't really... there was not much awareness or care for it. Not that it wasn't seen as a bad thing, but nobody was really believed as much when somebody, a big content creator, could possibly be some kind of a predator. And so I feel like that culture heavily carried into Dahvie Vanity's continued abuse of these women and minors, 100%.
Fortunately, the story did not end there, because several years later, Jeffrey walked back portions of those criticisms after feeling the band was being victimized and collaborated with Dahvie again on their 2014 single Poison Apple from the...
Damn, that's fucking crazy. Hey, this person's a pedophile. Also, I want to get an opportunity to work with them again to make some music after they're gaining popularity. Oh, but so they're not really pedophiles.
album Bitchcraft.
I don't know, that's a little slimy. I can't help but feel like that's a bit fucking slimy.
Creating confusion among fans and critics alike. Looking back, that reversal would become one of many examples cited by observers who argued that warning signs surrounding Dahvie were frequently ignored, minimized, or pushed aside during the band's rise. Regardless, Blood on the Dance Floor remained at the height of its popularity, powered by internet fame, devoted fans, and a rapidly growing cultural footprint that seemed impossible to slow down. But the deeper people dug into the band's past, the harder it became to dismiss the accusations as internet rumors. Because what started as scattered stories shared on message boards and social media gradually formed a pattern that stretched across years, involved numerous alleged victims, and reportedly pointed back to the same person. Throughout the late 2000s and much of the 2010s, Dahvie built a direct relationship with fans through platforms such as MySpace and Facebook, which were especially powerful during that era because artists could communicate with followers without managers, journalists, or record labels acting as gatekeepers. For many young fans, receiving a message from a musician they admired felt personal and exciting, and according to numerous later allegations, that excitement became a vulnerability that could be exploited. According to accounts that
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it. Dahvie Vanity was a real piece of work.
would later be collected by journalists and investigators, Dahvie allegedly used a remarkably consistent approach when interacting with young fans, many of whom were reportedly between 13 and 16 years old.
Wow.
And sometimes even way younger.
Jesus Christ, dude. 10 years old. Wait, hold on a second. Molesting them when they were 10 years old in 2009? Dude, what is fucking wrong with this guy? This guy is insane.
Reportedly between 13 and 16 years old, and sometimes even way younger. Several accusers...
I guess if he did it nowadays, he'd be totally fine. I mean, look at politics right now. Fucking, if you're a white rapist pedophile, you could be the president of the United States.
Claimed they were invited into private spaces through promises of helping with merchandise, appearing in videos, attending exclusive meet and greets, or simply spending time with someone they viewed as a celebrity. But as these stories accumulated, former fans began describing a dark environment where admiration for a performer was taken advantage of and boundaries were crossed. One of the earliest incidents took place in September 2009 in Denver, Colorado, near a venue known as the Live Spot, where Blood on the Dance Floor was scheduled to perform an all-ages show. According to later victim testimonies and statements from former band member...
I'm pretty sure Dahvie Vanity is one of the biggest reasons why a lot of these shows at emote concerts and everything, or scene areas, should be 18+. I'm pretty sure Dahvie Vanity is like one of the biggest fucking reasons why.
Garrett Ecstasy, Dahvie allegedly separated a teenager named Torin Nicole from the crowd, and she followed him innocently, thinking that Dahvie was just interacting with a fan.
Hear him really well, and he said, "Hey, you know, let's take a walk outside," which I was 17 at the time. I was fangirling, and I was like, "Oh my God, Dahvie Vanity wants to take a walk with me. That's so exciting."
Damn.
However, what happened next would traumatize Torin for years to come.
To one of the stores that was just past the venue. I mean, but then he pulls me back in near an electrical box where there's kind of like an inlet. Pulled me back into this electrical area, and
Yeah, there's fucking Chris Hansen, dude. Bro, Chris Hansen's listening to these stories and he did absolutely nothing about it. He just grifted on this entire fucking thing. He didn't get any police involved. Because here's the thing, when you hear that Chris Hansen is going to crack down on a predator, he gets shit done. He involves police and everything. And I can't deny that Chris Hansen has actually made the world a better place by locking predators up and involving law enforcement Enforcement and all that stuff. He's like the biggest inspiration for people like Gideon and Skeeter Jean, even Alex Rosen, as much of a shitty person as Alex Rosen is. But Chris Hansen really fucked up so many Predator investigations during COVID. Dahvie Vanity was one of them. What else? Onision was another one that he fucked up heavily. There's so many fucking investigations that Chris Hansen massively fucked up about Dahvie Vanity.
I mean, immediately pushed me down onto my knees and then shoved my head on his crotch. And then he did pump once, and then he did a plate onto me.
The situation escalated quickly enough that police were called.
I don't know what she's saying, by the way, because the video over-censored it. What is she saying?
And, I mean, immediately pushed me down onto my knees and then shoved my head on his crotch. And then he did pump once, and then he did a plate onto me.
The situation
Damn.
escalated
That's so disgusting.
quickly enough that police were called, and Dahvie was taken into custody on September 13th on suspicion of felony sex. However, the case never moved forward to a trial because, according to Torin, there was no evidence even after the rape kit was administered because she had cleaned herself up after the gross experience.
God, I hate that. Hey, she cleaned herself up after the gross experience, and therefore there is no... Dude, our legal system is far from perfect. God damn it.
And I think that's...
I mean, at least she went to the fucking police regardless, but still, oh my god. That fucking is so annoying.
Actually, when I ran
and frustrating.
into Ariel and she told me what had happened to her, well, she did not specifically in detail tell me what had happened to her, just that something had happened to her.
It happened. And Ariel, what do you remember about Torin's state of mind at the time?
Yeah, I was there when she was telling her boyfriend about it.
As a result, the charges were dropped, and Dahvie was released and consistently denied wrongdoing, arguing that the allegations were false and pointing to the lack of a criminal conviction as evidence supporting his position. It was that night that led Garrett Ecstasy to eventually quit the band and accuse Dahvie of PDF stuff, but not before performing the remaining dates of the OMFG tour, where he and the other bands on the tour, including Electric Valentine and Weston Buck, concluded without Dahvie after he was kicked out of the tour. However, after Dahvie dodged this case, he posted a blog entry to the band's MySpace.
It really is frustrating how many times Dahvie Vanity actually gets away with criminal charges here. I do remember that very frequently, and Chris Hansen made that problem so much fucking worse, and I really hated that. But it is frustrating how many times Dahvie Vanity actually got away with his crimes here. He got the women actually, and what even makes it even more frustrating is the women in this situation actually did the correct thing and went to the police for sexual assault claims and sexual violence claims, only to just have the police fucking deny it and the police to do absolutely nothing about it, despite the fact that he absolutely was engaging with it.
Account, proclaiming that Garrett had been kicked out of the band for various alleged offenses, including being a frequent user of unspecified drugs, stealing the band's tour van, stealing Blood on the Dance Floor from him by performing the remaining shows without him, deleting unreleased recordings, wrecking the tour van, and stealing money from him and the band. In response, Garrett posted, "Wow. To all the fans that really believe Dahvie's bullshit lies on that fucking blog, you guys need to change who your heroes are. I told you the truth. It's up to you to not believe that piece of shit. And if I stole Blood on the Dance Floor, why is Dahvie still continuing it?" And Garrett's side of the story made more sense to some, because around the same period, Dahvie was also...
Damn, maybe Garrett was the good guy the entire fucking time. I thought Garrett was the bad guy. I could have sworn that, like, Garrett Ecstasy was not a good guy in this story. Maybe he was the good guy the entire time.
By yet another girl named Ariel Klein of inappropriate conduct when she was just 16 years old.
That's crazy.
He was doing autographs. I didn't have anything for him to sign. I was like, I need an autograph, and I had big cleavage at the time. He signed my part. I am just so embarrassed about, but you know, I was 16. I wanted attention, wanted the clout. I'm like, hey, Dahvie, can I have a kiss?
Seeing this as a free meal, Dahvie accepted her
That's so... Okay. Jesus Christ.
request, despite knowing that...
I mean, predators, I guess, do have an appetite. Not the good kind.
she was underage, but proposed a different way to fulfill Ariel's wishes.
I feel like the not knowing the age excuse, that is a valid excuse and can be, but in Dahvie's case, it's not a valid excuse, and I'm going to explain to you why it's not a valid excuse in Dahvie's case. Dahvie Vanity, it is your responsibility to verify the ages of these people. If it happened once or twice and you didn't know the age of these people, or even 3 times, okay, you didn't know the age, you could chalk it up to irresponsible behavior, you didn't know the age. But Dahvie Vanity doesn't care about whether or not they're underage. That's the problem. I just don't believe that he didn't know the age. That's so unbelievable. And even if he didn't know, it's his responsibility to fucking verify it.
So he walks me out, back down the stairs that lead into the venue, and we go outside, and I'm like, we're in his car, and he drives across the street. And I'm like, this is getting super weird.
After sweet-talking her and then taking her to a secluded location, Ariel thought that it couldn't get any weirder, but unfortunately, she was wrong.
You know, just trying to make me comfortable with everything. And he's like, so you want a kiss? I'm like, yeah. And then he just, pretty much just starts aggressively making out with me. I'm like, oh, this is more than a kiss. Okay. And he moves on to feel me up, grab my chest.
As if to calm her even more, Dahvie allegedly went on to compliment Ariel's body right before taking things even further.
Then he starts, grabbing my hand, putting it in his lap. He's erect, rubbing against it. I'm like, not wanting to do that. And he keeps pulling my hand back, pulling it back, and just like, hey, I don't want to do all of this.
But after not getting what he wanted, Dahvie grew cold and eventually drove her back to the venue, ditched her without walking her back, and gave her a dirty look as she departed. Yet,
wow, Jesus fucking Christ, dude. Oh, Jesse Slaughter ties into this fucking story? I remember Jesse Slaughter. We'll talk about Jesse Slaughter in just a sec. I'm pretty sure Jesse Slaughter is a trans person now, right? Aren't they a trans person? Whatever. Anyway, we'll talk about Jesse Slaughter in a second. But that cold look that Dahvie Vanity gave earlier, that would have been... I mean, that really goes to show you his real intention with going on these tours. I don't even know if he actually cared about performing necessarily. I feel like he just used these tours almost... Like, this is going to be, like, super conspiracy brain to me, but I feel like Dahvie Vanity used these tours almost as a way to lure these women out, just to fucking attempt to sexually assault them and rape them. Weirdly enough, it could actually be seen as like a legitimate... I know the word grooming online gets thrown around a lot. I mean, I guess not as much nowadays because of Donald Trump being in office and rape and pedophilia being acceptable now. But with Dahvie Vanity, really, I would say that his tours could potentially be some form of a grooming tactic. I also remember Jesse Slaughter back in the day. Jesse Slaughter was heavily bullied back in the day. Back in 2010 or 11-ish, Jesse Slaughter was bullied on the internet, and, the internet was so nasty to Jesse. I remember very clearly. Obviously, they were a kid, and they were being aggressive on the internet, saying, oh my god, the internet, you all are just bitches or whatever, but they were just a kid at the time, okay? Yes, they were aggressive, but it doesn't justify the internet being fucking nasty to this person. It was probably very traumatizing to go through as a kid. I wouldn't doubt that.
this was not the last of Dahvie's victims, because an internet personality named Damian Leonhardt, who was widely known online as Jesse Slaughter, would also come out to expose him in 2010. Now that year, Jesse had become the target of one of the earliest large-scale internet campaigns.
I never actually knew that the reason Jesse Slaughter was harassed was because of Dahvie Vanity's allegations. That I never knew about. I don't think I even understood that context. I just remembered that Jesse Slaughter had a platform on YouTube, and Jesse Slaughter would talk about her stuff or whatever, or like talk about how, hey, I have fans, I have this and that, and they were just like, they were obviously like a young girl, like a young emo girl or whatever, talking online, and they were just like, that was it, and the internet just made fun of them. I don't even know if the internet knew that full context. I certainly didn't have that full context, that was where the reason Jesse Slaughter was harassed to begin with was because of these allegations. You learn something new about your past every single day, I guess.
Generating headlines, with much of the public discussion focusing on cyberbullying and viral internet culture. However, years later, Jesse publicly accused Dahvie of bothering them when they were 10 years old in 2009, while Dahvie was 24.
That's crazy. That's intense. Dahvie Vanity was sexually assaulting Jesse Slaughter when they were 10. That's crazy. Wow. Okay. That's
Man, you were 10 years old at the time.
Yes.
This was the first time someone had publicly accused Dahvie of grape, and so, in 2020, Jessie shared her testimony with journalist Chris Hansen about the alleged sexual assault.
He was very obsessed with, like, my mouth and putting his fingers in my mouth, and then, like, very...
That sounds like Dahvie. All the testimonies that Dahvie's survivors have given have been very consistent. That's another thing I noticed. All the victims have insane amounts of credibility. All of their stories are consistent with each other, where Dahvie Vanity would frequently try to force oral sex on them constantly. Everything is consistent. I don't think that these victims have any low credibility. Maybe some people were opportunistic about it, I guess, but the bigger crime and danger of Dahvie Vanity should be the bigger part of the conversation, obviously.
He soon wanted me to give him a job. Yeah, I was a 10-year-old, and he fingered cake into my mouth. And then wanted me to blow him in a bathroom.
He fingered cake into your mouth.
This was clearly a pattern
Yeah.
that most of Dahvie's alleged victims went through, and since most of them were underage, it was clearly a horrifying experience.
He taught me most of what the beginning of my ed was, and that's legitimately horrifying to think about.
Despite
Because you were 10 years old at the time. It's so fucking disgusting, dude. You have to remember that this is a fucking 10-year-old we're talking about while he's 24.
this, their relationship went on and off for quite a while, with Jessie hoping that one day they would finally become Dahvie's woman.
10 to 12, you were with on and off Dahvie Vanity, hoping that you'd be his woman, his girl.
Yeah.
But it was not the experience they'd hoped for, because over a subsequent 16 months, Jessie accused Dahvie of repeatedly groping them under the guise of BDSM-style activity. And while this was a bit extreme for a child, Dahvie would realize violence and claim it was part of a consensual dynamic.
A consensual dynamic. It was the furthest thing from consensual.
Eventually,
Every single one of the sexual experiences that Dahvie has had has been anything but consensual.
rumors spread online that Dahvie had slept with the then 11-year-old Jessie. But while Jessie initially denied the rumors at the time, the internet community, particularly 4chan, launched a massive harassment campaign against the child, doxing them
I know, yeah. This I do remember. It was on 4chan as well.
and sending death threats.
Again, I never knew Dahvie Vanity was the reason why Jessie Slaughter tied into this lore, ever.
In response to the severe harassment, Jessie's father, Gene Leonhardt, recorded an angry video defending his child.
Oh yeah, I remember her dad became kind of a meme in a lolcow for some reason. I remember. End of conversation from her father, or something like that. He really was a boomer after all of that.
He should.
I'm pretty sure he passed away, I think. God bless. Rest his soul.
In the video, he threatened the trolls, claiming he had backtraced their IP addresses and reported them to the cyber police.
The cyber police!
Famously,
Consequences will never be the same. I do remember this very briefly. I mean, it's like, I want to laugh at, like, some of the memes that spawn from it, but at the same time, what happened to Jessie Slaughter was fucking terrible. She didn't deserve any of the harassment she received back then. That's awful. It's obviously very traumatizing for someone like her.
shouting,
And I'm pretty sure she got put in foster care right after, right? That's like, Jessie Slaughter's kind of had an insane life growing up.
"You done goofed." And
Maybe that's why they used Scene to help them out. Maybe Scene was like a cope for them. It's also kind of like, I have a weird conspiracy theory, but that's also kind of why a lot of people become non-binary. It's like I don't want to say a cope because that's obnoxious to describe someone's identity with, but they almost use it as, I mean, it kind of is like a cope, but it's not like a cope in the sense where it's like, oh, you're just coping. It's more just like coping with the traumatic stuff that's happened with their life.
consequences will never be the same.
And I know who it's coming from because I backtraced it with the police. Because you done goofed.
You done goofed. That's another meme. You done goofed.
As these clips went viral, instead of addressing the serious nature of the allegations, Dahvie chose to mock the victim and their father. With the help of Jay, who was at the time still a member of the band, they wrote and recorded the song "You Done Goof" as a diss track to the then 11-year-old Jessie.
That's great. Wait, that's real? Blood on the Dance Floor made a diss track against That is actually unhinged if that's true. Wait, that's real?
Addressing the serious nature of the allegations, Dahvie chose to mock the victim and their father. With the help of Jay, who was at the time still a member of the band, they wrote and recorded the song You Done Goo as a diss track to the then 11-year-old Jesse. But the worst...
You know what? Dahvie Vanity, look at this. You're just a pawn of stupidity. You are a living mistake. I'm the king of the chessboard, so motherfucker checkmate. Homie's trying to rap in the scene place. He's trying to rap with his little fucking Deku voice.
The then 11-year-old Jesse. But
guys, I think we gotta play the video. The Deku video.
Hey, Kajan, do you like my cat cosplay? Meow meow.
So ugly!
I know.
Wait, what? You weren't supposed to agree with the Deku, are you okay?
No,
What's wrong, my Tanya?
I'm depressed.
Deku! No! Deku!
That's Dahvie Vanity right there. That's Dahvie Vanity trying to do a diss track against Jesse Slaughter right here. This is Dahvie Vanity. I had to just play that clip for reference.
But the worst part, Dahvie intentionally released the song on July 27th, 2010, which was Jesse's 12th birthday. Wow, imagine writing a song about an 11-year-old when you're bordering on 30s. What a sad, sick man. I can't imagine what it must be like to be an 11-year-old girl who had her biggest idol not only use her, but throw her under the bus, get his fan base to bully her, make meme parody videos about her, but to top it all off, write a diss track like this.
It truly is, like, honestly, like, jokes aside with the whole, like, how terrible the fucking diss track is, like, jokes aside, I will say there is that must take a special kind of evil for somebody in their 30s to make a diss track about some fucking 11-year-old that, I guess, made public allegations that were your own fault. That takes a special kind of evil. I don't know.
That's something I don't think...
It truly is crazy that the police didn't get this guy sooner. And that is the frustrating part about the entirety of the Dahvie Vanity case, is that police were just not able to do anything about Dahvie Vanity and him being a fucking serial predator.
Most adults can take, let alone an 11-year-old. This case stayed in the dark for over 5 years, and the FBI only got involved and opened an investigation on Dahvie following the 2018 HuffPost expose and Jesse's subsequent public statements. And things only got worse for Dahvie from here, because in 2011, HuffPost published an extensive investigation that exposed that Dahvie had sexually abused over 20 women.
Allegations and reports that he has been involved in inappropriate sexual relationships with at least 22 underaged young women.
And I think all the women that he sexually abused, there was even more than that. I'm pretty sure it was over 22. I'm pretty sure Dahvie Vanity had allegations bordering into, like, the hundreds, right? Like, close to the hundreds of girls. Still one too many.
While those allegations were generating headlines, former band member Jay began speaking more openly about his own experiences. When Jay left Blood on the Dance Floor in 2016, the initial public statements were relatively vague, leading many fans to assume the split was simply another disagreement between musicians. However, later disclosures painted a far more troubling picture. Jay alleged that Dahvie exercised extensive control over finances, claiming he was denied fair access to earnings generated by the band despite years of touring and recording, according to Jay's statements.
Yeah, that's where you drew the line. Not the fact that Dahvie Vanity had these allegations of sex abuse against him. No, the fact that you couldn't make money off of Dahvie being a serial predator. That's the part that you drew the line at.
That
fucking greedy bastard.
Financial control extended into...
Really is frustrating as well, the amount of people that enabled this shit. At least fucking Garrett Ecstasy had the decency to leave early and accuse him early.
Daily life.
Like, he saw this back in 2009 and went, oh shit, that was kind of fucked up. I thought that he was one of the bad guys in this story, but I guess I must have mistook him for this guy, maybe. Because Garrett Ecstasy actually did the correct thing in this situation.
life, leaving him dependent on Dahvie for necessities, including housing and food. Additionally, Jay described severe emotional strain during his years in the group, explaining that he felt isolated from family members and trapped within a situation that became increasingly difficult to escape. But the most disturbing claims were allegations that Jay was pressured to continue touring despite serious illness, and further alleged
Vaughn Monroe, I assume that's Jay, was diagnosed with HIV during a severe illness while on tour, requiring immediate medication. Oh, jeez. Well, that's not good. How much fucking sex with groups were you having? Groupies.
that access to necessary HIV medication was interfered with during that period. With a former associate speaking publicly against Dahvie, the image of blood on the dance floor increasingly shifted from a controversial scene band to a case study in how celebrity influence, fan culture, and unchecked power can create conditions where allegations remain hidden for years before finally reaching public attention. But this would not last for long. The first major structural break came in April 2019, not too long ago, when streaming platforms began removing the band's catalog. Spotify and Google Play Music took down large portions of their discography, including albums and singles that had once been heavily circulated across the scene community.
I think that's probably for the best, because Spotify and Apple Music and all these other big platforms that host music, they probably looked at Dahvie Vanity's association with Blood on the Dance Floor, and they saw all their music on their platforms and thought, yeah, we probably don't want a sex predator with this many allegations. We probably don't want to give them an opportunity to financially make more money off these platforms or give them more exposure. It could be both an optics thing and also just like not wanting to support or give money to them. I feel like it's totally justified given the insane amounts of credibility that all of Dahvie's survivors have.
The removals being tied to internal policy enforcement around hate content and material associated with violence. That removal had a direct impact on reach and revenue, since digital streaming had become the primary way most fans accessed music. Older fans could still find uploads on secondary sites or archived platforms, but the official presence of Blood on the Dance Floor in major digital stores became increasingly limited. And while the streaming collapse was unfolding, Chris Hansen, known for his earlier work on To Catch a Predator, launched renewed interest in online predator investigations through independent media platforms. Around 2020 and 2021, he publicly stated that he was examining the allegations connected to Dahvie following the HuffPost investigation that had surfaced in 2019. As part of this effort, Chris interviewed multiple accusers on his podcast-style programming, including Megan Hood and Elizabeth Favre, who detailed their accounts in long-form discussions. These interviews expanded public understanding of the allegations because they were presented in an investigative format rather than short social media statements, allowing the details to be explored in greater depth. At the same time, attempts to directly confront Dahvie became part of the public narrative, but it wasn't as easy because direct interviews or on-camera confrontations were reportedly avoided, with communication often filtered through legal representatives or declined entirely. But as the public conversation continued, the role of fan communities also came under scrutiny. A portion of the remaining fan base, who remained loyal even after Dahvie rebranded as Kawaii Monster,
Oh yeah, I remember he did rebrand as Kawaii Monster. That's a hell of a name to rebrand to, especially considering you have allegations, incredible allegations of pedophilia and sexual assault and being a serial predator.
continued to support the band despite the volume of allegations. Some supporters framed the situation as exaggerated or fabricated, while others treated the controversy as separate from their enjoyment of the music. This created a visible...
I am open to the argument of separate the art from the artist. Someone left a comment on one of my videos recently explaining that there are layers to separate the art from the artist, and to that I can kind of agree. I could maybe understand if it's someone like Walt Disney who is dead, and there's no possible way that Walt Disney could ever financially benefit from any of his work because, well, Walt Disney's fucking dead, so what is he gonna do with all that money in hell? Walt Disney's a piece of shit, as we all know, but he was one of the biggest pioneers for the animation industry, and I would say a majority of people look at the Disney brand as a whole and don't really think that much about Walt Disney regardless, right? I would say that with Blood on the Dance Floor, I feel like Blood on the Dance Floor's name has been so shattered with these allegations. The severity of Dahvie Vanity being a serial predator and using Blood on the Dance Floor's brand and the tours that they went on to target other girls and sexually assault them and rape them, basically, a lot of which were underaged. I feel like at this point, there's too much damage that's done to Blood on the Dance Floor's brand that I feel like you can't really separate the art from the artist here. And besides which, even if you do separate the art from the artist, Blood on the Dance Floor's music is ass. It's terrible. It was never even good to begin with.
Will divide online.
It's no wonder kids were fucking interested in this shit, because it's so terrible. I don't think any adult actually found Blood on the Dance Floor's music good.
Where accusers and supporters often clashed, with discussions becoming highly emotional and deeply polarized. During this same period, Fallon Vendetta briefly became associated with the group between 2017 and 2019, which drew criticism as public allegations against Dahvie were already...
Fallon Vendetta is a name that sounds familiar. That is a very familiar name. I don't remember how she ties into it.
widely circulating online at that time. Observers questioned the decision to continue performing alongside him, given the level of controversy already surrounding the band. Eventually, her departure from the group was followed by a noticeable step back from public discussion of the issue, and she largely faded from the central narrative that continued to surround the band. By the mid-2020s, this combination of platform removal, investigative attention, and fragmented media coverage left the band in a strange position within internet culture. Their music still existed, but their presence in mainstream digital spaces had largely dissolved. What remained was a legacy defined by the disturbing allegations about the band's leader. And by 2026, the story of Dahvie sits in a very different place compared to the peak years of Blood on the Dance Floor, because the band that once...
I mean, yeah, no shit. I would imagine allegations of being a serial predator and a pedophile would absolutely ruin them. But the most frustrating part about Dahvie Vanity's story as a whole is that he just never went to jail. He never suffered any jail time from anything. He went into police custody, but he never actually went to jail for anything. And unless there's some fucking miracle in the story that happens years later, way delayed, unfortunately, Dahvie Vanity's crimes will forever go unpunished. And I know that's not the take that people want to hear, but that's just the unsatisfying conclusion that we're going to get from the story. Unless this guy brings it up, like, literally last second. But yeah, Dahvie Vanity's crimes, unfortunately, there's not going to be any accountability for the shit that he did, unfortunately. That's frustrating, but sometimes not every story has a happy ending.
Tour stages and Hot Topic shelves now exists mostly in fragments scattered across the internet, independent uploads, and niche communities that still revisit the crunkcore era. And while Dahvie continues releasing music on his own terms, sometimes under variations of the Blood on the Dance Floor name, and sometimes through solo brands.
Is that even legal? Can you even use Blood on the Dance Floor's brand? Because wouldn't you have to agree with some of the other, I guess, what's left of your brand or whatever?
Such as,
I guess legally he can, because Dahvie Vanity maybe is like the only person that's part of it at this point. Everybody else fucking left him, because no one wants to be associated with him anymore. Understandably so.
The most vivid nightmares, the reach of these releases is extremely limited compared to the band's earlier distribution through mainstream platforms. What remains is a catalog that still circulates online in unofficial spaces, but without the visibility or legitimacy it once carried. Live performances have also changed dramatically from the band's earlier cultural footprint, because during the early 2010s, Blood on the Dance Floor could draw large crowds of young fans, especially during the height of their exposure through MySpace, Hot Topic merchandising, and festival appearances.
Of course, Hot Topic. Hot Topic merchandising was huge.
On top of that, reported shows linked...
My only exposure to going to a Hot Topic was, maybe that's not a story for YouTube. Maybe, I was thinking about it, I was like, maybe that's not a story for YouTube. I don't know. Browsing through Hot Topics is certainly a trip, though. I did it back in 2019, I believe. Yeah, 2019. Yeah, throughout 2019.
Had been described as small, underground events that attract far fewer attendees, often accompanied by tension outside the venues. In several instances, these appearances have been met with protests of public criticism, reflecting how his reputation followed him into every attempt at rebuilding a live presence. The shift from packed festival stages to isolated performances illustrates how completely the audience base and industry support collapsed over time. But despite the scale of allegations that accumulated across more than a decade, legal outcomes have remained limited, and this has become one of the most discussed aspects of the entire case. Even with dozens of individuals coming forward and detailed accounts shared publicly, Dahvie has not faced a prison sentence, and no major conviction has resulted from the allegations. Many reports and analysis,
knowing people like Tectone's audience would come in and be like, that's evidence that he never did anything he was accused of, because you have to be going to a criminal court for you to have any wrongdoing. Yes, because we all know that's how it works. If the legal system fails, that suddenly means you never did anything wrong. We all know that that's how it works.
point to structural issues within the justice system, including statutes of...
Well, if nothing happened to Dahvie Vanity back then, certainly nothing is going to happen now, given how so accepting of pedophilia and rape this current Overton window is, with Donald Trump in office.
And the historical difficulty of prosecuting cases involving internet-era...
Dude, what the fuck is this kawaii?
And the historical difficulty...
Oh my god. I think that this might be the thumbnail. I think we have to use this for the thumbnail. Guys, I'll be right back.
Of prosecuting cases involving internet-era and long-delayed reporting. And this is because victims often came forward years after the...
I do remember this interview. I don't know. I remember I laughed at this interview because of the way Chris Hansen handled this fucking interview. Like, what does this have to do with Dahvie Vanity? I'm pretty sure they only talked about Dahvie Vanity, like, once or twice, and then they never talked about him again. And then they just talked about juggalos for, like, more than half of it. I'm pretty sure this interview was kind of ass. That was how I remembered it. It's been a while since I've seen this interview, so maybe it's not as bad as I'm remembering it to be, but these people are... I don't know, man. I remember these people being kind of weird. I'm not gonna lie.
Alleged incidents. And by that time, legal pathways were already significantly restricted. While Dahvie's career has remained in a state of decline and controversy, the people who were once connected to Blood on the Dance Floor have taken very different paths. Jay has become one of the most visible voices to emerge from the group's aftermath, building a new identity in drag performance, and gradually stepping into advocacy work focused on HIV awareness and survivor support. His public...
Yeah, maybe you wouldn't have gotten that HIV if you didn't fucking rape so many goddamn women. Jesus Christ, maybe you would have actually, if you weren't such a sexually frustrated freak, maybe you would have actually prevented some sexually transmitted diseases.
Presence now...
I'd just point and laugh at him. He deserves it. We'll take any little victory we can get. Dahvie has HIV he can never get rid of. Ha 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 ha.
Centers on themes of recovery.
That's your fucking karma, Dahvie.
And personal rebuilding. And his story is...
If anybody watching this video has HIV, but they weren't raping anybody, I feel bad for you, okay? This is not directed at you. If you have any sexually transmitted disease and you didn't rape anybody, I feel bad for you. I hope they find a cure for you, but not for Dahvie. Fuck him. That's his karma.
Frequently referenced as an example of life continuing beyond a highly toxic creative environment. Garrett Ecstasy, who was part of the band during its early rise, has taken a different path entirely, remaining largely absent from public life. His disappearance from music and media discussions has often been interpreted as a sign of withdrawal from an era that carried significant controversy and emotional weight, and very little verified information.
He probably just wants nothing to do with it anymore. After seeing so much of what Dahvie was capable of doing and being a serial predator, he probably just, like, clocked out. He just wants to move on to other things in his life, things that are not going to be... like what should have been a good creative effort, that's debatable because their music sucked, should have been kept away from Dahvie, ultimately.
Exists about his current activities. The accusers, however, represent the most significant legacy of the entire timeline. The individuals who spoke publicly, including those interviewed in major investigations, contributed to a record that reshaped how the band is remembered. Their testimonies, shared across interviews, articles, and podcasts, collectively formed a body of evidence that influenced platform decisions, media coverage, and public perception. Even in the absence of full legal resolution, their willingness to come forward changed the trajectory of Dahvie's career and effectively ended his mainstream presence. And while most of the band's members had nothing to do with what Dahvie was doing, they still had to take a blow for the team, simply because the man who was supposed to be leading them chose to become what people regarded as a monster. Regardless, do you think that Blood on the Dance Floor will ever recover from the mess created by their leader?
No. No. Blood on the Dance Floor is cooked. Like, these allegations will forever tarnish Blood on the Dance Floor, and rightfully so.
I don't think so. But
no. Not at all.
I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe and check out the other videos on the channel. We'll see you in the next one. Peace. For years.
That was a really frustrating video to watch. Not because of the fact that, like, you know, this video was terrible or anything, but just because Dahvie Vanity is just never going to go to jail, and he's forever going to be unpunished. That's really what this is going to come down to.